Hello, everyone. Welcome. PowerShell Community Call, Thursday, January 21st, 2021. Happy New Year. As we typically do, we will wait just a couple minutes here for folks to trickle in before we get started, but we do have a strong agenda today. Lots of stuff to talk about, lots of good Q&A, so we'll just hang out here for a couple minutes and get started. All right. Let's get started. So Steve, do you want to hop in and talk about the new 704 and 711 servicing releases?
Sure. So we had 711, I think, trying to remember now, the end of last week, and we had 704 beginning of this week. These are just minor releases. Just so everyone knows, like whenever there is a major issue, bug fix, and the only major bug fix I can think of on the 711 release was a fix on reparse points on Windows. So this only affects Windows, where due to some other bug fixes or changes, you couldn't execute executables from like a network share or something like that because those end up as being sort of like reparse points, but didn't work correctly. So anyways, that's been fixed. So the only other changes really is picking up the latest .NET Core builds, which have their own fixes that we don't list out. So you'd have to look at their release notes to see exactly what changes they've made. Yeah, so nothing major there, but 711 has been published to the store. So by now, I think people would have automatically gotten those updated.
Just so folks know, were there security updates inside of that .NET Core build?
Nothing worth calling out from what I recall. Like there was nothing that necessitated us releasing on a patch Tuesday.
Okay. Great. So you should update. It's maybe not the most critical update in the world unless you are using those reparse points on Windows, but do just update, stay up to date, and it's always a good thing.
Yeah, let me mention one more thing because I didn't mention it on Twitter. Is like we are skipping a 7.2 preview release this month, mainly because there's a bunch of work needed to get the 704 and 711 out. We still have a few folks who are out, not back from holidays yet. And also, when we looked at all the PRs that were merged since the last preview, there wasn't anything really substantial. A lot of the PRs, which we appreciate, was more for enabling static analysis on the repo, so it doesn't affect end users. It just affects other people contributing pull requests. So from that perspective, it didn't seem like it was urgent to spend time on that versus fixing other issues or other work that we have on our plate. So our expectation is that we'll get a preview 3 of 7.2 out next month in February.
February. Awesome. So next on the list, we have the Secret Management AKV demo from Sydney. Sydney, I can, if you share your screen there, I will kick it over to you to take over on that one.
Sounds good. I am starting to share my screen now.
And then I can, oh, you have the ability to do that. Great, awesome.
Cool, yeah, looks like it's live on my end. Great, so I think I saw a few conversations around whether or not Azure Key Vault support was available yet for secret management. So I just wanted to do a really quick demo just kind of to show folks how they can get started playing with the Azure Key Vault extension. So I'll just show you quick. Like any other Vault extension, you can install it from the PowerShell gallery. This change was merged into version 3.3.0. So as long as you get any version higher than that, the Vault extension should be there. I also have a Vault already created in Azure. So you're going to want to make sure you do have a Key Vault already created. As you may know, secret management isn't really about the creation of vaults so much as the access plane for getting and setting secrets. So you can see I have my vault here. I have a couple of secrets already installed. So then I'm going to go ahead and register the Azure Key Vault. So I'm going to use the register secret vault command, provide the module name az.keyvault. If I don't provide a friendly name, it's going to use the module name as the name, but I'm going to call it azkv for convenience. And then this vault does use a couple of vault parameters. So some vault extensions use these parameters, so essentially it can point to the proper vault that you expect. So here I'm providing the vault name as well as my subscription ID for the vault. So we'll go ahead and register that. Now, if we run get secret vault, we should see that I have this Azure Key Vault registered now, and then I also have a secret star vault registered as well. So now if we run a get secret info command on the Azure Key Vault, this is going to return metadata around secrets in this vault. So we'll see I have this foo and this bar, which we just saw was existing already in the portal. I can also run a set secret command, a new secret, and we'll provide a vault, AZ key vault. And then if I run this, since I didn't provide a secret in line, it's going to prompt me to provide a secure string. So I'm going to type in a little secret there. Now, if we go back to the portal, do a little refresh, we see that my new secret is now there. So that just kind of shows you the basic functionality. Of course, I could also run a get secret command on this. I'll get the secret back, and then I can use the as plain text if I want it returned in plain text. But yeah, that just kind of shows the basic functionality of registering it and getting started. If you start playing with it and you do notice that there is some missing functionality or bugs or anything, be sure to open an issue in the Azure Key Vault repo. This is a totally open source vault extension. So I think that's all I had there.
Awesome. I will go ahead and take back over. I think you are next on the list, maybe with secret management updates. I will take over on the notes, but
cool. Yeah, I can provide some brief updates there as well. So earlier this month, we released our RC release candidates of both the secret management module as well as the secret store module. I think overall, we thought that these were very successful RC releases so far. We saw a number of downloads as well as a few issues filed, but overall did not find many issues with these modules. We are currently undergoing internal discussion around whether we want to do a second RC so that we could add in one more feature to the module before going GA versus deciding to go GA and then adding that feature with a 1.1 release. So either way, GA is certainly on the horizon. But if you are somebody who's really excited to see when exactly that GA lands, just keep an eye out on the GitHub repo, and we'll be updating the milestone there in the next couple of days.
Let me just call out that feature that we're discussing, I think came from Justin Grote, was about metadata. So maybe Sydney can post the link to that issue. Like, it would be great if we can get more feedback from the community about how critical that feature is as part of a 1.0 release versus waiting for a 1.1.
Yeah, definitely. I'll post the link to that issue in the Q&A.
Thank you so much. Awesome. Yeah, we're very excited for this one. The RC is, I think it's very stable. I've used it a little bit, and we're tracking right on into GA. Sean, do you want to provide a quick update on the blog comments?
Yes, so I just went through an exercise of reviewing all of the comments on the PowerShell team blog and removed over 40 pieces of spam. So hopefully things are much cleaner, and Jason and I will be working on trying to keep that up to date.
Awesome. Yes, and blog comments are great. We do monitor them occasionally. I think Sean, you're saying you see a lot more of these. I think blog authors typically get notifications on them, but do note that there are a lot of blogs that have calls to action that will say hey, please, like, if you're having issues with this module, file an issue in that repo, or go straight to the source in terms of giving feedback rather than posting a blog comment, as that is going to always be the quicker way to really get to the folks that own that code and are going to look at it soonest. So awesome. Great. So if there's nothing else last minute from the team, I'm going to switch gears for a second.
Can I let me make
yeah.
Yeah, because I see someone had joined the call here. So for those of you that follow me on Twitter and also follow Tyler on Twitter, you're aware like Tyler had left the PowerShell team to join the VS Code team, and I had an open position for the PowerShell team, which recently was filled. So Andy Schwartzmeyer, who's on the call, is joining the team. He's from Microsoft. He had actually worked with us all the way from PowerShell Core 6 beginnings, even though he wasn't on the PowerShell team, he was on a partner team. So if you actually look through the commits history, you'll see that he actually has a very large number of commits very early on in the project, but now he's back. And I guess that's all I'll say about that for now.
Hi, thanks, Steve. I can just say hello. This is Andy. I'm really excited to be back working with PowerShell. I think it was a long time coming, for sure. It's been a few years, and I've just sort of watched PowerShell grow from this thing that was stuck in Windows to this amazing project on GitHub. And now we're here having community calls, and it's a nice, healthy open source project. And as somebody who's always liked open source software, I'm really happy to see where we're at. So yeah, excited to work with everyone.
Yeah, we're really excited to have Andy on board. As Steve said, he was a huge contributor early on to the Linux effort, and you can go see some of the early issues that are still relevant today. Were filed by Andy, and most of the original code base checked in when we started that Git repo up. So yeah, we're really excited. Thank you, Steve. A great call out. Cool. So let's switch over to working groups for a second. So there are 2 PRs that you should review if you're interested in this. So we will link to those in a second. I do have them both pulled up here. So essentially, we've had this RFC process for a while, and it's been going okay. But I think a lot of you note that, hey, there's a fairly large backlog of these RFCs. There's 26 of these. There's a lot of them that we haven't gotten to, or that we just don't consider a huge priority right now, just given the amount of sort of churn in the repo and how much we're handling already. Obviously, we go over to PowerShell, and you're seeing 137 pull requests, and we're really trying to get a better handle on how to sort of prioritize these. One of the problems that we've noted happening quite a bit is that we'll get pull requests in the form of RFCs or as code where something is not really in fitting with the overall PowerShell project, and people are going to a lot of work to write these documents and to build these code PRs, in spite of the fact that it may contain a breaking change that we're unwilling to take, given our commitment to the stability of PowerShell, or maybe the design is really not what we're comfortable accepting. It's maybe not consistent with existing PowerShell principles, or there's performance implications that maybe weren't well understood by the author when the code or the RFC was written, that prevent that from being merged. And so what we're really trying to do is sort of left shift the conversations around whether or not features should really be accepted into PowerShell at all, in addition to creating an environment where we have more experimental features and more sort of churn in terms of user data and real world feedback that people can provide that guide our decision-making process around whether to accept these features altogether. And so, what we've done is formulate this concept of a working group, which is essentially taking the old area owner labels. I'll go ahead and pull up the issue labels here real quick. But essentially, we've converted a bunch of these area labels into these WG labels that define these sets of working groups. And within these PRs, individuals have actually been assigned to these working groups. And the expectation is that instead of having sort of RFCs come in unsolicited or undiscussed beforehand, or having code PRs just sort of get dropped into PowerShell to be randomly reviewed by a maintainer if it catches their eye. This is really a way that folks can have discussions around whether or not those RFCs or code PRs should be written in the first place, and that there's an authoritative body that is not quite as large and sort of scaling across the entire repo as the PowerShell committee, because we've found that we're really not a body that can scale well to the volume of everything coming through this repo, and that having a first layer triage from a working group is ultimately more desirable, so that we're getting sort of more of a summary of info, or the ultimate conclusion that the community and the working group comes to after a discussion, rather than engaging with those discussions at the beginning, when there may be implications that aren't yet well understood. Additionally, these working group members are expected to be experts in these areas. So for instance, the engine working group contains people that are highly familiar with sort of the inner workings of the engine code. We've got additional ones right here, like the interactive. These are folks that work in PS readline, or that work with the formatting and output system, right? That are really experts in that area. So the other thing that we expect with this working group model is to be able to bring in community members who may not be experts across the entire PowerShell code base, but who may have contributed in the past and have a really strong working understanding of a particular area of the code, and really be able to give them more formal responsibility in terms of applying that expertise to triaging, reviewing, discussing, and ultimately making a call within issues about whether or not they should proceed through the RFC process, are minor enough to just take code PRs, and then to sort of assess those experimental features over time as they evolve. So, this is not a silver bullet in terms of magically, making all these issues go away or having all the pull requests get triaged, but it is something that we're dipping our toe into the water here, and we're going to start, kind of triaging issues under this new working group model with PowerShell team members assigned to these working groups. And then as we progress, we may update this process a little bit once we feel comfortable with the way the process works. And I will go straight to the commits here, because I don't want to look at the no, that's not what I wanted. I wanted the, is there a way to get the node discussion? I'm getting stage fright right here.
Yeah, go to on no, there's a way to view the full file. I think it's on the right side, depending on the specific file that you want.
On the, oh yeah, well I was hoping to just see all of it as the,
oh, all of your
minus the comments, but yeah, but that's okay. This is really the big one here. So the working group definitions, we have the process defined in strong detail here, as well as in the PowerShell RFC repo, that sort of reconciles this new process out of the PowerShell repo. But the interesting thing here, I think, is the definitions of these working groups and the members that belong to them. So these folks are all going to be regularly triaging the areas within their particular working group. I think we decided we're going to add like a needs triage label or something like that they're going to take off when they've acknowledged an issue. But then, they're going to ultimately be responsible for saying, hey, this issue needs an RFC and should go through the RFC and experimental feature process, or this issue does not need an RFC, or this issue is really not something that we're interested in taking in the PowerShell project. And you should definitely try and do that work outside of the PowerShell repo on your own, ship a module in the gallery, that sort of thing. And that really is another central theme of this as well, is this idea that, hey, if this is something that you can do outside of PowerShell, unless there's really an absolute need or extremely high demand for something to be included within the project, we really want to shift as much feature code as possible out to modules. And that allows for folks to sort of decouple the improvement of functionality outside of a specific PowerShell version. Those of you on 7.0 and 7.1 and 7.2 can all take advantage of secret management, for instance. And that's a result of the fact that we didn't ship secret management as a built-in part of PowerShell itself. So that's really, we want everybody to do that, and then sort of, if you think there's a case to be made for including something within PowerShell, then maybe you say, hey, my module over here is extremely small and extremely popular, and every single person in the world needs it in PowerShell. It's a very high bar that we're going to have for that, but that's really the model that we want to have going forward. So please take a look at these if you care about the governance of PowerShell. If you're ever interested in potentially joining one of these working groups one day, it'll be good to have sort of an inner working of this. But again, this is something we're going to start operationalizing. I think you're going to see more engagement from some of the team members in more specific issues, and hopefully we can eventually churn through that backlog of RFCs. So yeah, I will drop links to these in the notes. Unfortunately, I do a poor job of taking notes on these things as I speak, but I will write some stuff in the blurbs here for everybody to check out. Steve, do you have anything or anybody from the committee that you'd like to add with regards to the new process?
No, I just want to emphasize maybe two things. One is the way I think about the working groups is really empowering folks, particularly folks in the community, and also team members who are not on the committee to make these decisions. And that's kind of led to the second point, which is initially, we have to fill in these working groups with people who know that area. So that's why we have team members associated with that. But we do want over time with proven contributors to also be actively part of those working groups so that more of the community can actually make those decisions and help the project along.
Yeah, absolutely. And this really, we had a lot of questions about like why aren't people on the committee yet from the community? These people work very hard in the repo, and like, when are you going to have more of that formal authority for community members and or even with this PR, like why are community members not in the working groups on day one? And really, we're trying to figure out the engagement model first, make sure that this process is going to work, that we work out all the kinks with issue labels, and that we have very specific guidance about how this is all going to work, and that we know that it works in the real world, right? We're following an experimental process here, just like we do with features, where we're going to dip our toe in, preview this new process, and then take it from there as we grow and scale the model. So
let me just add one more thing. I just remember, based on the feedback I saw on your pull request, because I think there's some concern about this. Like, just to be clear, like PowerShell team members who are on the working groups are participants. They're not intended to be like gatekeepers or leads necessarily of those working groups. Like, people should not feel like just because there is a PowerShell team member and they're a member of a working group, they won't be heard because the PowerShell team member trumps them. That's not the intent.
Yeah, and this is going to require a little bit of shift. I think someone made a good comment. I believe it was Vex32 about the the sort of deference that some people show in the community towards PowerShell team members. I think working group members are expected to be peers, as Steve says, and really, if they have strong opinions about an issue, that those individual opinions should be heard and weighed equally. But that being said, we also we don't intend for working groups to sort of become wide open, sort of do whatever you want kind of teams, where, well, I really, want this feature in the engine, and so, even if there are breaking changes, I don't care about them, sort of thing. It's really expected to be sort of a scale out of the existing principles and philosophy that we've had around breaking changes and, the risk to making changes in certain code areas. Even code cleanup in certain areas can be risky, and in addition to not bloating the package or adding too many features that may be of low demand but high size, that sort of thing. All those things are already philosophies that we have about taking PRs, and we're not trying to really change those in a significant way, but rather have experts that are providing sort of guidance on specific areas and how they may affect those existing kind of principles in the project. So yeah, I think that's just the final note I have there. But one more, Steve? You want to go back and forth one more?
On what?
I'm just joking that you. Do you have anything
no, not
else to add to that? Okay, great. So we can switch over to if there are no other last minute team additions, we can switch over to Q&A.
Switch, and then we can always go back to team folks if they have things to talk about.
Awesome. So the very first one is from Awake Coding. He has a list here: PowerShell Azure CDN distribution as opposed to GitHub releases. This is for the PWSH Up initiative. That is something we've talked about in the past. I think.
You want me to talk to this?
Yeah, well, I mean, the my initial thinking is it's only really required for Windows, right?
No. So yes and no. I think that so there's two different things here. Like for those of you not familiar with the, I'll just call it PowerShell Up initiative. This is an experiment, kind of like borrowing from Rest Up as a way to install PowerShell without having PowerShell on there across all distros, including Linux and macOS and whatnot. I think the big challenge there, or at least this particular comment, is about we should not be getting it from GitHub. And there's actually a reason for that. Like I know that I've already gotten some feedback from some customers where their enterprises block access to GitHub, or they block access to other places that we publish. So it seems like, yes, today we already published to an Azure blob storage. I think I'll have to talk with the maintainers, but I think we can just reuse that location. My plan is maybe to revisit the whole PowerShell up thing probably maybe next week. I plan to do some work over the holidays, but family got in the way, if you will. So I did more
best late holiday plans. Yeah.
Yes, I spent more time with them and skiing and stuff than doing any coding. So, I do plan to kind of revisit that again and see what the latest feedback on it, because I know there were some concerns about doing that at all. So we'll revisit that. So it's not a plan of record that we're going to do it. I just want to revisit what the feedback is.
Oops, sorry, I'm muted there. PowerShell native host in library is the next one. I'm actually unfamiliar with this one, but is this essentially the ability to access SMA APIs from native code? Are you familiar with this scenario here?
Now, for this scenario, I'm not familiar with this particular issue. I know.
Native host using existing PowerShell 7 installation, trying to expose. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Trying to expose the Microsoft PowerShell SDK APIs to native code.
Oh, rather than directly linking. So it's more like dynamic versus static.
Yeah, so unfortunately not familiar with this issue. We've heard this scenario in the past. There's been a couple folks that have sort of come out of the woodwork that are interested in doing something like this, but we've never had a really strong use case that they couldn't, work around in, sometimes a kludgy way, but ultimately a working way to, essentially just call PowerShell natively, like as a binary rather than as a native API. But I'd really love to kind of understand some more information on really what you're doing here, rather than the specifics of how this might work.
Joey's referring to the scenario versus the technical aspects.
Right. So in other words, like not, hey, I literally want to, call these APIs from native code, but, why do you want to do that? And what are you sort of prevented from doing by calling out as a binary to PWSH? So yeah, we unfortunately I don't want to spend too much time on this one because I think it is pretty in depth, but it is something that we'll definitely take a look at because like I said, we've talked about it with one or two teams internally in the past. And then of course you got all the good ones here. PowerShell custom transport interface. So this one. And I will just make a note here, would love to get more info on why you're doing this. But this one, I think, do you want to talk to this one, Steve? I mean, this is essentially, we decided, hey, we want to do the generic thing that's a little longer term, right?
Yeah, so I know, I think this originally came from Justin Grow and maybe some other folks. So just provide some, so we are, again, plans could change, but right now there is a plan to leverage the subsystem work that has been used for predictions as a way to pull out remoting and remoting transports as individual subsystems. The idea there is like, there's been some, I think what's his name, Jordan, who did some amazing work for WSMan on Linux, and we want to be able to pull out the WSMan remoting support as a separate subsystem, which would get published as a module on the PowerShell Gallery. So then the community can continue to update that for folks who need that capability. So that is something we are investing time to look to see about the feasibility. So I can't say that we're definitely going to get into them, but it is something we are committing resources to figure out if we can do it and how much it costs. So, I mean, the big challenge there isn't just pulling out those parts out of the engine, is really making sure that we don't break anything by doing this, right? So compatibility is the harder part.
Yeah, and I know this one's going to sound harsh, but I do mean it in the best possible way. There have been a push from a contingency of folks in this issue to check in what's essentially a hack that would allow you to shell out to a binary other than ssh.exe that is implementing some other protocol and kind of tricking PowerShell into thinking that the interface it's working with is an SSH-based one. That's not something that we want to support long term, and as such is not something that we want to push into 7.2, even if it means delaying this functionality potentially past the GA of 7.2. So I hear the desire for that, but at this point, if that's something that you want to use today, then it's probably best to, like, I think there's a working PR of that hack, so to speak, and I don't mean that in a pejorative way, but I think if that's something you need today, you should leverage a fork that has that parameter in it, because again, it's not something that we see as a sustainable long-term solution or something that we can support, certainly not in an LTS release for 3 years after 7.2 GAs. So apologies there, but yeah, the subsystem work is really what we want to try and get in instead of that temporary PR. Cool. Justin says +1 on the custom transport interface. I better be on the roadmap for 7.2, or I want my PR reevaluated. Again, I think we've made all the comments there. Very few code changes to review. I mean, it is simple, but it's not something that really makes sense from an architectural standpoint. So it could mean this. I mean, I am acknowledging that yes, it could mean being pushed out of 7.2, but we will do our best to get it in. But again, we have to maintain this code as LTS code for 3 years, and maintainability is a major consideration for us as we decide whether to take code. And in addition to the sort of UX whiplash, I would say, the user experience whiplash of saying, hey, this is the way to do that, except until the next version when we ripped that thing out, and then we put in a totally different way to do that, and everybody needs to update to that. And additionally, when you check something in for 3 years for LTS, that's just the support structure for 7.2. But generally speaking, we don't like to remove functionality and break people in later versions. So realistically, something that goes in, into 7.2 is really supported throughout 7.3 and 7.4 and 7.5. So this is how we sort of build up bloat over time, and that's something we're trying to prevent here. So. Good call out on the date of the call. I do this every time too, Steve. I look right in the corner of my screen. And
yeah,
just
I know.
Will Profiler make it into preview?
Let me actually cover that and the next one, which is the cleanup block, because I think there's a meta question, not specific to those two. It's like,
yep.
When are we able to get those into a 7 release? So Joey and I had gone through an exercise before the end of last year to kind of triage a lot of these open PRs and some issues, as well as ones that we decided, hey, we think these are worth investing team time on to review or investigate and things like that. So if an issue or PR is marked as 7.2 consider, or as a PR be backport 7.2 consider, that means that we are saying, hey, we're going to spend some team effort on this to kind of see whether or not it makes sense to pull it in. And it's not a commitment that it would make it in. Like, we may find like an issue with it, or maybe we don't agree with it after investigation. Now, with that said, both of those issues are marked as backport 7.2 consider. I can't say like, hey, we're gonna spend time on it this week or next week or anything like that. It's in the queue. Yes, I want both of these personally, but it does take time to go through this. And right now the team, again, has a lot of things on its plate right now. So I guess the only thing I can say is be happy that we got it marked as 7.2 consider. And yes, we will be spending some time on it. I would like to hopefully see through every preview at least one or more of the community features added in. So that's kind of like my goal, and we'll see if we can hit that.
Yeah, so I'm just making a note here that this is we have a 7.2, essentially like a backlogged queue marked by PRs have this label, and I think it's the milestone for
yeah, it's a milestone. milestone? I think it's a milestone.
Issues have milestone of 7.2 consider. Not committing to finishing these, but they are a higher priority among community issues and PRs. So yeah, unfortunately can't speak to those specifically, although typically we are not going to review draft PRs in the PowerShell as PowerShell code until they're ready to go. So just do note that you have to sort of decide that you're ready to get reviews before we're going to look at it. As Steve noted here. Yep, same thing. So if that is ready for review, please mark it not as a draft PR then, Ilya. Although I'm not sure he listens to this one, so we may need to post that there. See, Steve added it to future milestone, but Kirk Monroe's PR wasn't merged into draft. I like the idea. You're considering improving a draft. This is script block action preference. I don't remember where we landed on this one.
No, so again, let me be clear. Well, anything that's marked as future means that we think it's something that's important and we'll look at it in the future, but because it's not in 7.2 consider, it means it's likely not going to be in 7.2 consider.
Well, this is a PowerShell RFC repo, which is why it's
no, this is an issue. This is an issue that Jeffrey had opened
I see. It is. Yeah, you're
2
right.
years ago or 3 years ago now, I guess. And at the time, I think we had some discussions internally as well about whether or not this made sense, or did we want to do something with trap? I think is what we discussed, and I don't know. But it seems like Kirk Monroe does have a PR that solved this, so maybe and I think that PR is marked as review committee, so the next time we have a committee meeting, which would be next week, we can take a look at it and make a decision.
So there was another update on this revamp pipeline thread handling editor services. Is there anybody from editor services that's familiar with this issue here?
Probably not familiar.
I can talk to it a little bit.
Okay.
So as you'll notice, Joey's sharing his screen, 114 comments. So this is a pretty big issue that we have linked a lot of other issues to. So that's probably why folks are looking for a status update on it. This is the revamp editor services pipeline, I believe.
Yeah.
But anyways, we believe that this issue is one of the core issues that causes a lot of the stability issues in the extension. And it has been an issue that Rob has been working on and off on for probably around 9 months at this point. Unfortunately, that's not been continuous work because he has many other projects to work on. We do recognize that we owe the community a response on that issue to kind of get an updated timeline. As Steve mentioned, we do have Andy joining the team, and so as we sort out his onboarding and priorities, that'll probably shift how the timeline looks for this issue. But absolutely, it's the #1 priority issue for VS Code / editor services right now.
Yeah, I'll just say, first off, Andy doesn't formally start on the PowerShell team until Monday, so he's on here as a courtesy, I guess, to us. But Andy is replacing Tyler's old position on the editor services, along with some other stuff like the Jupyter notebooks and whatnot. So this will be, and of course, Andy will need some onboarding because the stuff that he worked on previously was more on the PowerShell itself side and not on editor services. So he'll ramp up, and this will probably be one of his top priorities initially. And of course, since he's ramping up, I don't think I or Andy can give any kind of timeline when this will get resolved. Keeping in mind that Rob has been trying to work on this for a long time, and he's a very smart guy, and if he couldn't do it, it wasn't easy, or isn't easy.
Yeah, this is definitely not a simple one. And as Sydney said, Rob has had some other obligations which have not all been in open source. Do note that there's a lot of work, despite the fact that we live in open source, there is still a lot of work that people do that does not it's not visible within the community, right? And so you know, it's not a matter of, oh, this person's being lazy or they haven't checked in code in 3 weeks. Like they could be working on some processes or internal you know, automation or you know, incubating projects that we're experimenting with internally that just may not be visible to you. So you know, be patient with us, but also we do totally recognize this one's been out there for a long time and folks do want an update on the editor services stuff. So yeah. It looks like the bulk of the questions today are just asking for status updates on issues. I think that makes sense given that, you know, we sort of are coming in after a release and, you know, folks are like kind of beating the drum on anything that didn't necessarily make it into 7.1, especially coming back from the holidays and maybe reading change logs and realizing that. But you know, we are kind of in the same boat, right? We're kind of looking at what we weren't able to get to last year and are starting to assess that. You know, the new year, obviously, folks come back from holidays, sort of takes a little time to get back in the groove of things. But I think ultimately, you know, there's a lot of this sort of backlog queue stuff that we want to get to. I'm confident that our process updates are going to, or optimistic that our process updates are going to help with some of this scale. But you know, we do ask again that you generally be patient with us as we work through the volume of this stuff. This one in particular is something about the install PowerShell PS1 script breaking for 7.1.1. Do you know about this one, Steve?
No, I don't think this thing is breaking. It installs 7.1.0, even though it's not updated or not updating to the latest version.
I understood it in my head. I just said it poorly.
No, so if it's about the metadata JSON, the points to latest version, I think that PR wasn't merged yet. In any case, let me just say, install PowerShell.ps1 was only ever intended to be used in our CI/CD system. Yes, I realized that I had promoted it on Twitter, but it was not intended necessarily for end user use. I think the PowerShell Up initiative is more suited for that. But we can take a look to see, because it should be installed in the latest version anyways. If we don't need to use it in our CI/CD as much anymore because Azure DevOps has PowerShell 7 support natively now. So it was mainly there when we were using AppVader and Travis CI when PowerShell wasn't there, or PowerShell 7 anyways.
All right. Would you mind taking a peek at the Q&A on the Teams and seeing if anything has come in live?
Let me see. There's a bunch. Let me start from the top. Let's see. Okay, so some banter. We can skip all that.
Banter.
For some reason, my scroll bar is acting weird. Okay. There's a specific issue being called out about zombie processes in PowerShell remoting.
Yeah, so a lot of this is about my pejorative of hack. I think actually, and this is really the point that I was trying to make here. Marc-Andre Moreau says that hack is actually what I now use in production in my product, which is totally fine and great, actually. If you feel comfortable taking a fork of PowerShell into a thing, like that is the beauty of open source here. So to some extent, while I understand the frustration of like, I'd rather just rev up the update myself, to some extent that is open source working as intended. So I know you probably didn't mean that when you wrote that, but that is the case. And that's true. It's not tricking PowerShell, but it's like the stood in, stood out method is already to some extent kind of a hack. And it's really, it's not something that we just want to set a strong precedent for, or that we want to have to, you know, maintain the fragility of long term, I think.
I want to put it, let me put it differently. Like, I think the fact that we internally rely on ssh.exe to communicate, for me, is really an implementation detail. Like that was not intended to be exposed to end users. So this would expose that, and if once it's exposed, we have to live with it for like the next 10, 20 years kind of thing, which is why we're pursuing the subsystem work instead, which would abstract it. And for example, with SSH, like we could potentially move to like an SSH.NET implementation versus XE, although realistically probably not, but that's just an example.
So Marc-Andre also asked, are working groups a proper way for community members to collaborate on some core modifications like the extensibility for custom transports? In this case, the design has been discussed, decided on by the PowerShell team. It isn't clear how community members can become a bigger part of those changes. Yes, that is absolutely the intention here. There will likely have to be some kind of internal working group communication channel, not internal to PowerShell or Microsoft, but internal to that working group. And we do want working groups to establish, ways to discuss things that maybe are a little touchier. Maybe they don't, they're not quite ready to show everything. We do have this thing of like, sometimes folks work better when they're sort of in a smaller cohort, and they're not immediately proposing things that aren't completely fleshed out, that are going to get lambasted in the open source. And so that sort of draft state is going to be more typical there. But I'd say actually in this case, the subsystem work is more just about kind of the I think just bookkeeping. Like it's really just the fact that we haven't really like the RFCs haven't totally been updated on all that stuff yet. I think we are fairly far along in that thinking, but it's just something where it's kind of a yak shaving exercise, and we just haven't maybe communicated back some of the progress that's been made there inside of folks' individual dev environments or wherever that work is currently happening. So yeah, but this is definitely the intention, Marc-Andre, for the long term. Yes, we did give Tyler a deserving send-off, unfortunately virtually, as Steve said, but Tyler, we are going to miss him. Although he's already working on all kinds of cool VS Code stuff that's going to totally be awesome for PowerShell users too. So yeah, Parallels QEMO already supports Win 10 ARM VMs in the Apple M1 with better performance than Service Pro X. I have heard really cool stuff about the M1. Would love to check it out at some point. Great. So I think we made it through. Always relies on SHXE and non-open SH is unlikely to be ever integrated. That is true. That is true, but I don't know why that's necessarily relevant here.
No, it's just a continuation of the SSH-XE.
I know, but I don't.
Hack versus non-hack. I think I don't know. Let's not use the word hack in the future.
It's yeah. Well, it's a it's a hard-coded solution. How about that? It's
Sure.
Cool. We are done. It looks like 10 minutes early. I'm not seeing any more major questions come through. I will refresh this page just to double check here. But it does look like that's everything. So I did kind of expect maybe a little bit of lightness towards the end of the call, just given the holidays. I know folks are ramping back up. As a reminder, for those folks that have not yet had a chance to update to 7.1, if you're someone that doesn't necessarily need that LTS stability, this aka.ms/ps GitHub BI is the link to see the public usage data that we collect via the opt-out telemetry. And as you can see, this purple area in the lower right is all still folks on 7.0. And this lightish pinkish tan is folks on 7.1. These are daily starts of PowerShell. So we would love to see same thing over here, aggregated by month. We'd love to see this 7.1 start to eat 7.0 up, so that we know that folks are able to upgrade, and so do that if you haven't. Update your container images, update your server hosts, all that good stuff. Would love to see that 7.1 usage grow. But all in all, our usage has been relatively flat. We had a little bit of an uptick in December, but otherwise, things have been pretty normal. But we usually see about 4 to 5 months after release, significant upticks as folks adopt newer versions. in new projects. So we're hoping to, with the new year, a lot of projects get started around the new year. So we want to see that staircase growth again, as we did about 6 months ago. So definitely, if you didn't know about this, check it out. We've got lots of other good pages tracking some more details about the usage of PowerShell, and that's akms/ps GitHub BI. Did anyone from the team or Steve have anyone that they want to add before we end a little early here?
Nothing from me, but I see 2 new questions. Keith, do you think improvements to calling native apps will make NSM2? Yes. Well, let me say, yes, we are. That is a priority for us. I believe Jim is working on a PR for the arg parsing aspect of it. I think the sit-e side is
that's the non-zero last exit code.
Yeah. So I think that one, I believe Jason has or will be publishing an RFC. I don't remember what the status of that is.
Yes, that has been published, and I think at that point it just needs to be implemented. I even think we may have tentatively accepted it for experimental.
Yeah. I don't know if we well, we'll see whether or not implementation said that she will make it in. Like, there's just a lot of stuff being planned right now. So, but definitely the higher priority for me right now is the argument side. So again, for me, I would love to get to a point where you can just copy and paste an example of a native command line from like a wiki or a help page or whatever and paste in a PowerShell and it just works. And hopefully that's like at least 89% of the time if it doesn't have things that PowerShell misinterprets as PowerShell syntax. But I think the main challenge for us, why we couldn't even get into 7.1, because we started the discussion way back then, is the break and change problem, right? Making it work as people expect is a breaking change, especially now that we have Linux and Mac OS support and Windows command args works different from Linux and Mac, and that's been a pain point for us.
And this last one about whether there are some sideline projects that should be interested in, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Well, we'll announce when we're ready to announce, I guess.
Yeah, we have, folks. I mean, we do a lot of internal experiments, right? There's a lot of stuff that we don't talk about because it never sees the light of day. And then there's stuff, secret management, for instance, was something that we churned on, played around with, discussed, for a long time prior to deciding that it was something that we wanted to commit to doing, or even to commit to, previewing and experimenting with. So, we like as early as something may look on the first day that we put it out, it wasn't the first day it was conceived or worked on ever. So just keep that in mind as you're waiting for maybe your pet project to suddenly materialize one day. Awesome. Thank you so much, folks, for joining. We really appreciate it, as always. It's a pleasure to have you. Happy New Year again, 2021. We are really looking forward to the year. 2020 was obviously a little crazy, I think we could all agree. And so, we're really looking forward to the year of 7.2 and just all this crazy stuff we're working on. So thanks again, and we will see you in February.